guys? Welcome to Fantasy Effect episode 103. We got Combine Risers and Fallers today. We have our own free Discord. If you guys would like to join that, please hit us up on Twitter and or Blue Sky, Patreon as well. And please like, comment, subscribe. Got Holler and McSpanky with me tonight. How's it going, guys?
Let's go, man. The combine's behind us. Free agency starts next week. The draft is inching closer and closer. It's a good time of year, man. People are making moves.
Excitement. Yes,
a lot of moves today, preparing for the cap. I think they have to be like cap compliant before the free agency, right? Before the new league year, is that?
I think so.
I think that's why they started doing some of these things. But
yes, sir. We are. Let's see here. I was counting it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're like 7 weeks away from the draft. I'm pretty stoked. Free agency will be fun. Nothing too surprising from today. Obviously, I think the biggest one was the DK wanting a trade, which I don't think is that surprising since there were some rumors like I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we've heard it before.
Yeah, I was more surprised that it was like I saw the thing go through that he requested a trade, and I was like, oh, weren't they already? Because I felt like they've been talking about this for a while. I was like, oh, wasn't that already a thing?
Right. So exactly.
It sounds like official. But
yeah, should we pop down into the news?
Yeah, I mean, basically started.
Okay, we had Debo get traded to the Washington Commanders. They sent a 5th-round pick, and they take on all of his salary. Correct? That's why
most of it, a lot of it.
Most of it. Okay, and that's why the pick compensation is so cheap there. T. Higgins gets the franchise tag for now. Stafford signs a restructured contract in LA. Khalil Shakir signed a 4-year contract extension, $32 million, $15 million per year. $32 million guaranteed, sorry. And as Holler mentioned, DK has requested a trade, and Tyler Lockett is to be released from the Seahawks.
He gone.
Christian Kirk is going to be released by the Jaguars. Saquon gets a contract extension. The Jets have released Devontae Adams, and that is it for the news. A lot of the news for, March 5th.
A lot of news.
I know, right?
Christian Kirk release, I thought was the one that caught me off guard a little bit. I know he's been injured the last couple of years, but he's really good when he's on the field. Maybe the Jaguars' new regime just didn't think he fit with what they kind of want to do. Their moving forward plan. So he's a good player, though. I'd like to see. I'm curious what his market is. I think he's a nice, solid slot guy to bring in. But
yep, I agree 100%. I think he'd be a nice, number 2, number 3, depending on what team he lands on. But I think he does need to go to a team with a solid QB. So I think he can bounce back if he can stay healthy. I think that's the biggest thing with him. It's like health has always been a bit of an issue. And then I don't think Debo to the Commanders is like, I know there was like a lot of surprise or whatever, but to me, I just don't think Debo is the same guy that he is, and I think he's going to probably be like the same. Maybe he'll be a little bit better, because guys get a little more rejuvenated once they're on a new team and everything. But it's not like the 49ers had a rough year last year, but the 49ers were a good team. So we'll see what happens there. I think it's actually probably good for McLaurin, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, even Debo, I think at this stage of his career is a better upgrade than like Diami Brown.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Some of the guys they were rolling out there this past year, right? But I mean, make no mistake, it's not like the 2021 Debo Samuel who put up like 1,500 yards, right? Like that's not who Commanders are getting. I think
no.
But like you said, sometimes a change of scenery helps motivate some guys. And there's a narrative you can tell yourself, like for a bounce back for Debo Samuel. I mean, midway through the season, he got hospitalized for pneumonia. Like that usually knocks people. I mean, normal non-athletes, normal people on out for like 6 weeks before you start getting like your lung capacity and everything back.
Sure.
I played like either later that week or the very next week. So, there's a narrative you can tell yourself, right? Is like he got injured, and then he got just like the weird thing with the pneumonia. Like now he gets to play with Jaden Daniels. It's funny too that like how much Brandon Ayuk wanted to play with Jaden Daniels all last season,
Brandon
and
is upset.
the 49ers trade one, and it's Debo. Just kind of
he's coming out to practice in his birthday suit, man. He was already stripping his shorts off last year.
Oh, Ayuk, yeah, I remember he got fined for wearing the wrong colored shorts and stuff. Man, I think Ayuk too. This is nice for Ricky Pearsall, though. I think.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
I mean, I know he had an opportunity last year, but I think he was trying to play more of the Ayuk role, where I think maybe he's going to be more situated to play the Debo position.
Yep.
We'll see how he does. Jawan Jennings,
and he got shot in the chest earlier in said year.
So there's that. Yeah, I mean,
that'll slow you down.
I mean, Brian Robinson's been great since he been shot too. So I think
even the great ones, it took him a little bit to get get back to form.
Exactly.
So.
That's why I brought it up. But I was pulling up Dynasty Daddy, and like, there's, in my opinion, not much of a market for Debo. Like, trades all over the place. Most of what I'm seeing here is like a late 2. There's like 211 and 301. There's Debo for 210, Debo for 28, 27. You know, so I think, in my opinion, unless you are loaded at wide receiver and you're going to throw Debo on your flex, like in one of your flex positions, I think there's a little more upside to keeping that late second pick, because you could get yourself like a possible solid running back. Like, I'm not saying Tyrone Tracy is this really good guy, but he has solid value right now, right? So you can move off of him versus I think Debo is only going to lose value, in my opinion.
Well, and I don't know if at the late second even gets it done. Honestly, if you're the Debo manager, you probably want closer to a mid, probably like a 206 to realistically move him, because you can tell yourself that, like I mentioned earlier, there's a narrative of, well, he was banged up his last year, and now he's on a new team with a better quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, if I have him, I don't really want 2.7, 2.8, right? I'd rather just keep him. But if I'm not really buying at 2.7. It's kind of where I was at. I mean, 3 days ago, there's 111, which I would smash 111 all day if I could move Debo for that. So. But yeah, in my opinion, I don't think the market's great for him. So just kind of hold on to him. Like we say, let those kind of die, let those type of players die on your roster.
Right around that 206, 207 range, just on my Ricky rankings, we're looking at like Jaden Higgins, Basil Tootin, Jalen Noel, depending on draft capital, maybe a Jalen Royals, a Harold Fannin. I mean, those are, yeah,
exactly.
And Debo,
that's what I mean. Like,
I mean, he's 29 years old too, so he's not. I think some of his best playing careers are behind him, and he's not the kind of guy that I think could play into his early 30s. I think once the cliff comes, which we might have already seen it, I think it's going to come fast. I don't think he's going to be able to be much value past, say age 30 season. So,
yeah, exactly what I mean is like if you're moving for that 207, we'll say 207 to 212 range, like those guys could possibly pop, they get a good landing spot, and you don't love having them on your team, then you can move them for something probably better than that second or whatever. So like I said earlier, like I'd rather have 207, 208, but if I have Debo, I probably not moving him for that as well.
I think the move I would be okay with doing is if you maybe you made the playoffs and you lost in the first round of the playoffs this past year, rather than sending your 207, 208, maybe see if you can send your 26 to maybe like a random like third to kind of like sweeten the deal, and see if you can get Debo that way. Maybe he can help you, and then you can add a piece this year as well. And I think that might be more palatable than just doing a 1-for-1, just like a swap of a 20-25-2 this year.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. I think good for Stafford, good for Puka that he stays in LA, doesn't go anywhere else. No changes there. So I think that's a really good signing there. Do you guys think T. Higgins will get a contract before we get to camp?
Knowing the Bengals, probably not, and I bet I would assume he's going to be on holdout watch, and he's one I'm nervous to have, particularly in redraft more than anything, just because we see it every year. The guys that hold out, they either get banged up, or they pull a hammy, or they just try to come back and play too fast because they're always oh, I'm in shape, I'm working out, but it's different, right? Like when you're on your own versus OTAs and training camps. So I'm a little nervous, less so for Dynasty, but more so for redraft side of things with T. Higgins.
Good call. That's
Yeah.
there. I don't think he gets a contract before. I think they're really working on trying to lock up Jamar Chase. Yeah, so that's kind of their first option there. So yeah, I mean,
they don't even offer 3 meals a day at their facility. They're not going to pay top dollar for Chase and Higgins.
You're a wide receiver too, anyway, man. Come on.
Yeah, get out of here.
I think it's good for Burrow, right? I mean, obviously he needs to be on the field but I think it's really good for Burrow. I think it's solid for T. Higgins. I think he's a better like upside wide receiver 2 than he would be on a team for wide receiver 1. I think he would be a solid wide receiver 1 on a team, but I think then he would, get the best corner against him, and I think that we might not see the same production as we do as him as a secondary.
He benefits greatly from playing outside of Jamar Chase, as would pretty much everyone, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing too with Higgins in a deal, if I'm Cincinnati, I'd be a little hesitant to pay him top dollar because, I mean, the games. How many games has he played every year? It seems like every year he misses at least 4 or 5 games or so, and even when he plays, he's always on the injury report, right? You never know. He's like a game time decision, or he's whatever going into the week. So, I don't know. I can see the Cincinnati side of things. I know they're a bunch of cheap asses though too, so I can. But I feel bad for Higgins. So this is back-to-back years where he's up for a contract and it just gets the tag. But it is what it is.
Yeah, the Cincinnati way, as you guys mentioned before.
24, 23, he both had 12 games. 22, he was his most one.
Yeah, so
15 in 2022. So the last 2 years he's had 12 games only. So
I mean, missing 5 games, 2 to 5 games every year, right? Like that's a significant portion of the season.
Yep.
Yeah. So especially in fantasy. Yeah. Should we talk about these combine risers and fallers?
Yeah, let's do it. Well, real quick too, with Davante Adams, where do you guys think Adams and Rodgers end up? Because they're going to go together because they're attached at the hip apparently.
I mean, the latest I've heard is New York. I don't know if he lands there because I've also heard New York wanting to move up
across the city
and get and go to number 1, get Cam Ward. So I don't know. I mean, if I were I've talked about how much I don't like Aaron Rodgers and the drama. So I don't know exactly where he lands. Right? Like it could be. We talked about it last week. It could be the Raiders, but I don't think that happens either. It's Brady, I don't think he's going to sign off on that. And also, with him and Adams being, attached to the hip, there's no way Adams can be like, yeah, let's go back to the Raiders. So I don't think that happens either. So I don't know. I don't. There's probably not much, suitors for both of them, like especially because they need to come together. So if it was like I think the Rams, I think the the Niners are not really, but like those California teams are possible. I think for Adams by himself, not necessarily with Rodgers as well, obviously. But again, I don't know for sure.
I think Davante would do well at either the LA schools or teams, not schools.
Yeah.
College football.
You guys are doing too much deviating. As a package, like the only place I can put them is Tennessee. Like as a package, they could go together and walk right in, and it's pretty much. But I don't know if they want to do that. They just did the whole like we're going to bring in a bunch of old vets and try to compete last year. Are they going to do that again, or just kind of try to lean into the rebuild side of this and say maybe it's just not our year?
That's the thing too with some of these guys who are like coaches and GMs that are on the hot seat. Let's talk about the Giants or maybe even the Titans. Like if you bring in Rodgers and Davante Adams, it better work. You better get to the playoffs, or you might be out of a job this time next year. And I don't think that's a situation where I think a lot of these coaches and GMs want to be in, where they're like, well, I'm going to put all my eggs in the Aaron Rodgers basket, where it's like, how committed is he? Almost also just aside from the sideshow piece of it, what is his commitment to being on the field? His level of play hasn't been overly great. It's been, if I'm being generous, probably about league average quarterback play, right? So it's not like you're getting like a top 5 quarterback anymore to bring into your building. You're getting a kind of a middle of the road guy, and I don't think he moves the needle for your team.
And he's got to be like viewed almost as a bridge, like a 1-year thing. So there's got to be a young quarterback, and we've already seen him with a young quarterback, and he's not the best mentor out there. So does somebody want, Aaron Rodgers mentoring their next quarterback as well? Like there's so many aspects to the Aaron Rodgers puzzle there. It'll be interesting for sure to see where he goes.
Yeah.
Kind of hope they go together just so it's a circus.
Totally. I know Max Crosby was like, I hope Aaron Rodgers comes to play with me here. But I think, the latest I saw Matthew Berry a couple of days ago said that like maybe he just kind of sits and waits if we see an injury and then signs. I don't necessarily think that would be his option, but more of like nobody signs him and he just waits and stays in shape. I could see that. I could see that going on. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with Tennessee. I think that's a possibility. But like you guys both said, like I don't think that's good for GMs in my opinion. So I don't know.
Where bets go to die. So I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Because like, does New Orleans want to replace Carr, or?
I don't think they're married to him long term, but I think they're stuck with him this year.
Yeah.
Right. And like if you're gonna get probably pretty close to the same level of play out of Derek Carr without the sideshow and having to bring it, having to redo a contract to get Aaron Rodgers in and figure it out with Carr, like you just sit there with Carr.
Yeah, I think the Saints are in a point in their life cycle in the salary cap where they have to kind of take their medicine and just rebuild. They tried to play this game where they were kind of kept pushing the cap away and away, trying to compete, and they never did. But I think now they're in a point where they're too far down the road. They're too far away from competing and in a horrible cap situation.
Yeah, no good for the Saints. All right, you guys ready for these combine risers and fallers?
Yeesh.
Okay. So number one guy we got here, Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas.
Yes.
I think it started building before the combine a little bit with Golden too because of the Senior Bowl. I think he started getting mocked in the first round, and then he puts up some pretty awesome numbers at the combine this weekend. What do we think about Matthew Golden? Where are you guys going to take Matthew Golden?
I liked Matthew Golden a lot. He was kind of climbing up my rankings anyways. And then he comes in, he ran a 4.29, man. And he's not like the smallest guy in the world. Like he's like a good size. That's like a legit 4.29. It's not like how Xavier Worthy was like 12 pounds and ran a 4.2. This is like fast. And he can run routes. He's strong too. He scored a ton of touchdowns at Texas. He tore it up at Houston before he got to Texas. That's actually when I was looking at putting together the draft kit and looking at Matthew Golden's, stat lines against top 40 teams. The year before he transferred to Texas, he lit Texas up, who actually had some pretty good corners, which is probably no coincidence why he ended up there. They probably saw him firsthand and said, "Oh, we need this dude." He's awesome. I've actually seen it's kind of the new fun thing to do in mock drafts is to put him as the first wide receiver off the board, even ahead of Tet. I'm not personally there. He is my wide receiver 2 at the moment. I actually have him up at my 107 at wide receiver 2. I've seen some mocks where he goes 15 to Atlanta, which would be kind of fun. Him and Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and maybe they actually have a receiver that's worth a shit. And Matthew Golden now instead of just a couple guys who are big bodies.
Hey, the Moon Man was good.
Mooney's great. He can play in the slot, and then then you got I think pretty good options, and then Bijan Robinson. That offense would look pretty sweet. Assuming Michael Penix
really good.
doesn't completely blow, right? And then
so Golden's not a huge riser for me. I had him like early second. Now I have him in the first 111. My third wide receiver. I can't really put him over Burden just yet.
Really
possible. Yeah, I can't. I mean, to me, I just think Burden's just a really, really good wide receiver. But I wouldn't fault anybody for going Golden over Burden. So for me, that's just kind of where they're at. I may drop Shedeur Sanders a little bit more and move Golden up. But I made my updates after the combine, and probably won't make any more adjustments till after draft day.
Do you have Golden behind Sanders right now?
Just one spot behind, 10, 11. They're all in the same tier. So 9 through 13 are all one tier for me. It's Burden, Sanders, Golden, Igbuka, and Hunter. So I just have Hunter there at like 13 because 2-1 is the most comfortable spot I have. Or I would take him not knowing everything, and I think on draft day we're not going to know everything. So 12-1, I don't mind either way there. But yeah, I think for me, like I know Isaiah Bond and Jaden Blue both were from Texas, and they both said, "Hey, we're going to go and break the record." But I didn't hear anything from Matthew Golden, and he just went out and ran a great 40. So
for me, like the other.
Yeah, so for me, it was really nice 40. He's good size. So for me, if he does go wide receiver 1 in the draft, then that will definitely change things for me. Especially because I've heard some negative things about Tet. I do think Tet's the best wide receiver, but we'll see. But I've liked Matthew Golden. I had a couple Debbie shares of him even when he was on Houston, and then the dude just scores touchdowns, so you can't deny that.
Yeah,
touchdown machine.
He's a touchdown machine. I can see why teams might want him over Tet, just because I think there's some question marks with Tet and his ability to separate and his athleticism. And he didn't test, and Golden did, and how everybody always gets like, well, here's the new thing, and you're like, well, I saw this guy run a 4.29. Like I have that clocked on the GPS. Tet, I think, is good. I think he ran fast enough. I think the GPS during the season, they clocked him at like 22 miles per hour, which sounds fast. I'm not context wise. I don't know how to you know what I mean? Like that's moving, but I don't know. It's different though too. Like if it's like build up long speed, like if he, you know what I mean? Like he had some open space, got going. It's different than like just going from 0 to whatever.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
40-yard dash in your underwear. So,
right.
Yeah. Right. So, I think overall there's a lot of talk in our Discord, which is really good chats, but like some people don't care about the combine. Other people do care about the combine. Like overall, I think you don't want to drop people too much from what you see at the combine. I think there's a little bit of guys like that are not as known that will rise a lot more than others. So for me overall, like, I think Golden, kind of showed out a little bit, but before I didn't really have him that much lower. He was probably maybe a little bit like around wide receiver 4 or 5, right? Maybe under Trey Harris. But then, a good combine, and I move him up a little bit, so, but I mean, there's other guys that we don't really know exactly who they are. And I think they can move up, especially this one guy, the next one, Bayshal Tootin, had an awesome day.
He had the zoomies, man. What, you run a 4.29? Or that was 4.32.
4.32, yeah.
But dude, he was 206 pounds.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's pretty fast. Like that's pretty big. Like he has good size, and to run that fast, like, and if you watch him, like his game tape too, like he plays that fast too. It's not just like track speed that doesn't translate. Like he legit plays that quick too. Going back to whether the combine matters, I think it does to an extent. Some of these guys, depending on how they test, it matters because NFL teams see that. And like, I think I'm a firm believer that Bucky Irving dropped in the draft last year because he didn't test very well.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with how he could play football. It was just, he didn't test well. And so he went down in the 4th round instead of, maybe in the 3rd where he would have went before. So I think it matters in that regard. And then the other part about the combine, I think that matters the most, is the part that we have no insight into. And it's the team meetings they have, how they interact with the coaches and the GMs, right? Like, and we just don't get any insight into that, which sucks, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I'd also just like to see guys compete, right? Like,
sure.
The spotlight's on you, and like it's just a glimpse of what are going to happen, like game day and everything, right? So, sometimes I don't think it hurts people like a Travis Hunter or Tet too much if they're not participating. They wait for their draft days or their pro day. But yeah, I think overall it's like guys like Bayshal Tootin and a couple other ones we'll talk about that really are the movers.
I think the one concern with Basil Tootin is he wasn't really much of a huge involvement in the passing game. I don't know if I think it's less that he can't do it. I think it's more just how their offense worked. But but that is the one downside. Like anytime you see when guys don't get a ton of like passing work, it limits some of their fantasy upside.
100%.
That said, I have him as like a mid 2 right now, which I feel pretty good about. I think with his performance, I would expect him to go day 2, draft capital wise. I don't know where do you guys have him right now?
Yeah, probably. I think the highest he could go is the 3rd round, and for me though, he was probably my biggest mover. He was probably farther down, like in the 30s, and I bumped him all the way up to 18 overall, running back 7. But I can, I could flip flop him and Giddens and Neal any day of the week, But I think a lot of at the end of the day, it's going to, depend on draft capital. But I do think he could sneak into the 3rd round if some teams really like what they saw. But I think the most comfortable spot for him is probably the 4th, so day 3, 4th or 5th round. I don't think he'll land last until the 5th round, but I think he will nowhere. Like I think he goes no later than the 4th. And I think that will be a big difference, right? So say someone like a Devin Neal or DJ Giddens goes on day 2 and Tootin goes on day 3, then Tootin's going to probably go behind those guys, and then so, but I think overall, like this running back class is pretty deep. Like there's 10, 12, 13, 14 guys that I like. I think at the end of the day, the draft capital is really going to make the difference.
And that's the thing too with how deep the class is. There might be teams that let's say there was only like 5 good running backs. They might go earlier because teams are like, well, I need to get one of these guys. Whereas now you can probably list off like 15, 16 running backs where you're like, yeah, they can realistically go in the 3rd round. So some of those guys might slip to the 4th and 5th, and it's less to do about if they're good enough to get the draft capital, and more is just like teams can go, well, we have a bunch of needs. We feel like there's a bunch of these running backs. I'll just wait and I'll grab one later, right? We feel good about like 10 to 12 of these guys. I'll just wait until they start kind of going. I mean, that happened last year too, right? There was a part in the 4th round where I think like 4 running backs came off the board like consecutively. So, I mean, something like that could happen again. And it's one of those things where, like, historically, draft capital, if you go in the 4th round, you're not going to be a consistent fantasy producer. But also, I think there's you have to, like, the context behind it, right? Like, there's always the pure numbers, and then there's, like, the context, and you can tell yourself stories, right? So you got to see the full scope of everything.
I think he's a day 3 guy with what you said, McSpanky, just with the depth of the class, and teams have, other needs and priorities. There's 22 other starting spots out on that field that teams are always trying to improve and fill. And with the depth, people could just end up waiting on running back. I really think day 3, just because there's zero hype on Tootin up until he had some at the Senior Bowl, but it was basically for the 40 time, or not the 40 time. What they do,
they
the
tracked
GPS
him the
times.
fastest on the GPS. Yeah.
Yep. You saw him there, and then once again, you see him run fast again. So that's awesome.
Big
I'd like to watch a little bit more tape on him than what I've seen so far, but yeah.
There's not a ton of like. It's usually just a mock has just the 1st round, right? There's some that have like 2 or 3 rounds, so it's hard to see like where we could possibly see him go, right? But I think day 3 is like, if I was betting, I would bet on day 3 than more than day 2.
It's probably the best bet.
More comfortable.
But you're gonna get better odds day 2.
That's true.
Okay, so Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, a pair of wide receivers out of Iowa State. Pretty solid combine for these guys.
Both guys had great combines. 4.47 for Higgins, 9.87 RAS, and then 4.39 for Noel, and 9.71 RAS. I think Higgins was the one that didn't do agility. So Noel just had a full combine, and that RAS is quite good. But both of them put up good numbers at Iowa State. And for me, Noel was my biggest riser post combine. I couldn't remember exactly where I had him before. I think I had him like maybe 25 to 230, so like a 3rd round guy. And now for me, he's like securely in a 2nd round guy. I have him all the way up at 16. Sorry, 19, reading at the wrong guy. 19, and he's my wide receiver 8. Higgins is the one that's at 16 and wide receiver 7. Right. So, I like both those guys quite a bit. Both good speed guys. So, I think they both had a really good day, and, they both solidify themselves, I think, as day 2 wide receivers.
I think so too, and I think they're both. I mean, they're totally different wide receivers, but they both showed out really well. I mean, Higgins is like the big body, like a true X receiver. He moves and runs routes a lot faster than someone at his size realistically should. Some of his releases off the line are fantastic. I think he's probably going to go higher than a lot of people think he will. I think he's more like a borderline top 50 guy, whereas Noel, I think he's probably more like early third. Just and some of that's because Noel, and he's a pure slot guy, right? Like he's going to play in the slot, but he's shifty, he's real fast. He's pretty decently sized. I have them both back to back in my rankings. I mean, if you look at their production profiles, they got used almost like evenly at Iowa State. They just and we were kind of talking before the show. We were like, how was Iowa State not better with both of these dudes on the field at the same time? And their running backs not bad either. I think he's draft eligible next year. And
then Rocco's solid. The quarterback puts up good numbers. So they put up a lot of numbers, and I think they're, I just think they had a tough schedule.
Yeah. I mean, as tough as the Big 12 can be, I think.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
or let me rephrase. They made their schedule tough. Like they lost games they shouldn't have.
Competition. Yeah. That probably did happen. Man.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. We also got Quinshon Judkins as a riser on here.
So he didn't get talked about a lot, but so he came in at 6 foot 221. He ran a 4.48, which is really good. That's the same as TreVeyon Henderson ran, who's in 20 pounds heavier than TreVeyon was. He didn't really get talked about a ton, and it's not so much that he rose for me, other than I just firmly put him ahead of Caleb Johnson for me at running back 4 over Johnson at 5. Before the combine, they were kind of tiered together and kind of that 4-5 kind of back end of the first. And I think Quinshon testing that well was a little bit surprising. I thought he was going to run a little slower than that. And so I think that might help his draft cause a little bit. I've actually seen a little bit where I think it's Kyle Krabs has him as his second best ranked running back in the class, behind Genty, obviously. But so I think Judkins might go a little bit earlier in the draft than we might be thinking, especially as the fantasy community. I think the NFL GMs might like him a little bit more, and he's got that Brian Robinson to him. I think he's more athletic than Brian Robinson, but just that he can do everything on the field, right? He's not just he runs fast, or he can catch the ball. He can run between the tackles. He can bounce it outside. He can run routes. He's legit, a really good running back. So
we saw in the national championship 3 touchdowns. I can't remember. I think over 100 total yards, and so he was quite good. I put him at or I have him at. I just had it all the way up at 7 running back 4 right now. I still like Hampton and Henderson over him. But like you said, he's there's a nice clean tier between him and Caleb Johnson. So and I feel really comfortable taking him anywhere 6 through 8, right? If you don't like the quarterbacks, if you don't like per se your tight end premium's not a full point, maybe it's 0.75 or 0.5. I think he can go all the way as early as 5 or 6, right? If we have Genty, Hampton, Tet, Henderson, and then maybe one quarterback go, and then have him at 6 or 5. I have no problem with that. So I think he's going to be a really, really good NFL running back, and will put up good fantasy points. So I like Judkins a lot.
Yeah, and he's a good blocker too. Pass he's
crazy.
Good running back.
It's so crazy that he's as fast as Henderson, because when you watch the tape, stylistically, it's totally night and day difference between these guys. Henderson is just exploding, shot out of a cannon, and Judkins is just between the tackles, just moving the offense down the field, man. So wild. Man, I wish I would have saw more breakaway runs from Judkins.
He had some, but I don't know what it was. Maybe it's just 'cause they put him in situations where they didn't scheme him up in space as much. Like they saved some of those plays for Henderson 'cause he's more the home run guy. I don't know what the deal was. I know in the national championship game he got run down from behind, but I saw that again, and the guy for Notre Dame who ran him down like got clocked like running like just like an insanely fast time. So I think that was less on Judkins and more just the dude that caught him was just gazelling down the field. So
Sure. Yeah, there's a few of them out there on the field. You guys want to get into the fallers here?
Yeah.
All right, McSpanky, what is up with everybody in Oregon and taking a test?
It's not a test. They get test anxiety. I think is what happens.
Although the Turd Ferg, he tested well.
Turd Ferguson ran great.
I'm Turd Ferguson.
I'm Turd Ferguson. No, so Tez Johnson, wide receiver from Oregon, he came in super light, right? Like first of all, he was listed at like 165. He weighed 154. And then he ran a 40-yard dash at 4.51. But then here's the interesting thing. He had one of the highest track GPS scores or speeds during, I think it was the gauntlet. Like one of the tests he ran just like an insanely fast time. And it was like, well, what the hell happened here? You would think you could run faster straight line, but I think the thing that I will say about Tez that I will also say about applied to Bucky Irving is that they didn't test necessarily well, but watch their tape and they play a lot faster than they ran. I don't think Tez Johnson is slow by any means. I am concerned though that he tested poorly. He was already undersized. He came in even lighter than we thought he was. That he might, instead of being like a fringe day 2 guy, that he's now firmly in the, well, does he fall out of the 4th to the 5th round guy and basically just die due to bad draft capital.
We did a mock draft on Monday and he went in the 4th round and I was like, to me, I wasn't that surprised by that. You did. Mm-hmm. You did at 4.6, right? Yeah. I was surprised by Isaac Tesla, but I know he had a really good combine. So I don't know if that's how you say his name either, but but I
could be.
I don't know. I mean, I'm with you 100%. Worried about Tez. I liked him a lot coming out of Oregon. He's a really good wide receiver when he's playing on the field, and so like I don't know. I really like the gauntlet and guys that can have a good gauntlet. I love Puka Nacua had an amazing gauntlet, right? I don't think that's what got him all the hype or whatever. And there wasn't really much hype, to be honest. But the gauntlet I feel like is a really good test versus just looking at straight the 40, right? So they're catching the ball. They're so for me it's probably a good sign that Tez ran fast during the gauntlet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't. He's so tiny.
Yeah.
I can see on some wide receiver needy teams, maybe, in a late round pick if he gets a nice landing spot or something along those lines. But I mean,
I think that's why it's fun to do mock drafts because a couple months ago he was going in the 2nd round, like wide receiver 6, 7, right? And just since then I've just seen him tumble. Once then we heard he was only 154 at the Senior Bowl. He tumbled a little bit more, and then now he's not running a good 40. So I think for me he's just kind of he dropped out of my top 10 wide receivers. I have him at wide receiver 12 now. There's just I think guys with better upside in my opinion. So I don't mind taking a shot at him in the 4th round, even like end of the 3rd round. I don't mind. But I think it will ultimately. We can say this about every player, but ultimately it will depend on draft capital and landing spot.
That's the thing.
Alternate theory on these Oregon players and their testing. They know that if they run a faster time, chances are they're getting drafted earlier by said dumber team. And if you run a slower time, it causes you to slip to a smarter team. Do you think that they've instituted this in Oregon?
It's some galaxy brain stuff. That's the only explanation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Agree 100%.
Anyway,
I would just say though, like, don't just look at his combine numbers. Look at what he did against, like, particularly the conference championship game against Penn State. Dude torched him, and Penn State had a top 10 defense, like, and he lit him up. The Ohio State game earlier in the year, not the playoff game. Granted, everyone for Oregon sucked in that playoff game, but the Ohio State game earlier in the year, I mean, he lit them up too. Like, he was there. He made plays pretty much against everyone, right? And he did it consistently. It wasn't just this year. He did it last year with Bo Nix, which I think they're actually like.
They're
family,
like half
right?
brothers.
Like so, which is fun. So maybe he could just go to Denver, and then they can have Nix and Franklin and Tez Johnson, and
it's just a pipeline.
Ducks 2.0.
They can draft Jordan James, and Terrence Ferguson. They tight ends, so they can just get the whole Ducks team.
Right, we'll just get the whole squad.
Run the flying.
The Eagles are just Georgia North, so I mean, would it be Oregon East?
Oregon East, love it. Right? They're not really on the East, but we'll take it.
I mean, East,
but they're east of Oregon, though.
True, that's true.
So is about every team, though. To be fair.
Hey, it was the easy one. Ollie Gordon, running back from Oklahoma State.
Yeah, he was slow.
It was slow, yeah. So I put him on here. Just he did not look good. Mainly, I was watching some of his drills, and his foot speed was just not good. And then he came in as a 8.09 RAS, not so good. And then 4.6 140, which is the second slowest 40 out of all the running backs. So not good. But for me, it's just something that we knew already. He had a rough year this past year in college football, and it just continued, right? I think for me, he's a bigger running back, so he could be like used as a secondary running back. But for me, he's kind of like firmly off of my fantasy radar. It's not somebody like, I think people would be like, oh, I'll take a dart on him in the second round or the third round. But for me, it's just like, I like to plant my flag, right? And, I'm planting my flag on the opposite of this one and not going to stay away from Ollie Gordon.
I think there's going to be people. It's not that I'm out on him. I just think there's going to be people that buy into what he did his sophomore year, and take him a lot higher than I'm willing to do that. Because for context, like his 2023 season, he ran for 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns. Like, he was fantastic. And then this past year, his yards per attempt dropped from 6.1 to 4.5. He still had double-digit touchdowns. The team just faltered around him. I don't know if he was banged up, but like he didn't run the same. It didn't look like to me. I knew he wasn't going to run fast. He is big. He's in that bigger, powerful back kind of player. I don't think he offers a ton in the receiving game. I think he's fine. I don't think he's like a plus asset necessarily, but I don't think he like hurts you. He's not like a liability. I don't see him making it in the second, third round, day 2 of the draft. I think he's a
I don't either.
guy. I think he's pretty solidly like a 4th round running back, and it's going to depend on the landing spot. But I think there's going to be people that are more excited to take him than I am willing to do it. I'm fine taking a shot on him in the 3rd round. I would assume if he goes in the 4th round, someone's going to get antsy and take him in the 2nd. And I'm going to end up with no shares of Ollie Gordon.
Yep, same here. He was in our recent mock draft. He was at 2.5, ahead of guys like Samson, Tootin, and Neal. And for me, I would take all 3 of those guys, Samson, Tootin, and Neal, ahead of him. But people have their likes and dislikes, obviously, right? And so I just knew about him. I played a lot of Devy, so I knew about him. Watched him a little bit more this year, and it just did not look good this year. Granted, Oklahoma State, not the greatest.
They were disaster. They won like 2 games. They were a disaster.
They're starting a 38-year-old quarterback. So it's just like, not really 38. He's just old. I think he's like 26,
he's
27.
36.
Yeah,
right.
So I don't know. I just think for me, he's not my cup of tea, right? If he's going to go in the 2nd round, there's plenty of guys I'd rather take And then even if we get to the third round, there's a couple other guys I'd rather take as well. So
over Sampson's the one I really took issue with. Dylan Sampson's an athletic freak. I understand that one. He's fantastic, and I think he's firmly a day 2 guy.
Yeah, I have him
like clone.
I have him running back 6.
Same.
Ooh. Yeah, it's been Ollie Gordon's got the DUI in the middle of all that too, doesn't he?
I forgot about that. Yeah.
He does, yeah.
Maybe it's just a mistake. Maybe he's a knucklehead. Who knows? But
had a couple beers,
right?
A couple beers.
It could have a couple of beers.
He can drive fast, but he can't run fast.
Right. We got Gunnar Helm up next, tight end from Texas. This is the guy that hurt his ankle.
Yeah, he hurt his ankle, but honestly,
Allegedly.
I feel like almost
took a photo of somebody else's ankle.
Right.
Hey, go roll this down the stairs, man.
So for me, I was watching. I think it was Friday night. I was watching the tight ends, and goodness gracious, the whole group just kind of looked a little bit slow and lackluster. A couple of the gauntlets, like I said earlier, I'm a fan of the gauntlet, and there's a couple guys that look really, really good. But to me, Gunnar Helm, if he injured himself on the first 40 run, just tap out, right? You have the pro day, just tap out. Yeah. Don't keep going and just looking terrible, right? He's kind of like a fringe guy anyway. Like, obviously, I'm not saying he's not going to be drafted, but he was kind of on the back end of the 7 to 10 range of tight ends, right? And so to go out there and not look good, it doesn't help your stock at all. So he's going to need a big bounce back on his pro day. And a lot of times, in my opinion, if you do well at the combine, then you can only do a few things at your pro day, right? So for me, you're already ahead of the game. So now he's going to come back and have a really, really good pro day, and that's only a couple weeks away. But I was reading a couple different articles, and a lot of people were saying the biggest group that was kind of a faller was the tight end group was coming into the combine. Yeah, going into the combine where everyone's like, oh, this is going to be a really deep class of tight ends, and it's going to be super good. But for me, only a couple guys stood out for me, and so yeah, I think I know that Gunnar Helm got injured, but if you do, just in my opinion, just tap out.
Yeah, I don't think he did himself any favors, and he was already kind of behind the 8 ball because he really only had the 1 year of production because he played behind Jatavian Sanders at Texas. I liked his profile quite a bit coming out of Texas. I wish he tested better, but it is what it is. I don't know, and it wasn't just unique to him. You touched on it. Really, none of them ran all that great. Yeah. Like Harold Fannin, he was pretty, I would say, universally the tight end 3 in the class, and he came in pretty light, and then he ran in the 4.7s, which I think people wanted him to run a little bit faster than he did. And then he looked not, let's say, graceful during his gauntlet. He looked like it looked off, which is weird because you watch him play and he's just this freak, and he just was doing all these crazy things. He put up a ton of numbers, and then he just looked like Bambi learning how to walk out there. I don't understand what happened. Maybe it was the lights are bright at the combine. I don't know. Yeah. So I think those two really didn't do themselves any favors with their testing.
Yeah, so we didn't really I don't think any tight end really rose after the combine. Mason Taylor's gauntlet looked really, really good. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Ferguson would be one that maybe moved up a little bit. He looked good across all of the different drills, and so but I wouldn't argue anybody taking. I know Mason Taylor doesn't block very well, but I wouldn't fault anybody because I've seen Mason Taylor at 3. Some people tight end 3. So I've seen, I think it will just, at the end of the day, I said it again, but it all just depend on where they land and also the team. We already have our 2 big tight ends, Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And after that, the next 3 are kind of, you can mix them up. So
for what it's worth, I don't think he blocks well. His numbers don't say that, but NFL scouts seem to like him. It seems like everywhere I am,
Taylor.
Mason Taylor. They think that he's a honestly a 2nd round tight end. And if that's the case, then blocking be damned.
Yeah,
I'll buy in, right? If he gets that draft capital. I'm good to go.
Yeah, so I think like after the top two, the next three are gonna really come down to landing spot, and if you do have a draft before a rookie draft before the draft, the NFL draft, then I think if you have to rank them, I would feel most comfortable going Fannin, Arroyo than Mason Taylor. So that would be I feel most comfortable that way. I would like to see if Arroyo how he does on this pro day. But we'll go from there.
That's the thing with him is Arroyo, the tight end out of Miami, is that he was injured a lot at Miami, and then he played at the Senior Bowl, and then the reason he didn't compete at the Combine is because he picked up an injury at the Senior Bowl. That's a little bit of a red flag.
Please.
The one, if I'm doing a pre-rookie draft, the one I'm probably the most confident in drafting out of those three is Mason Taylor, because he has the NFL bloodlines. His dad was a beast. And you know what? We joke about the bloodline thing, but you know who doesn't is the NFL GMs and teams. They love that shit, dude. Right. Like they eat that up. They're like, oh yeah, man. Like his dad played. His dad was a Hall of Famer. Like this guy's he's got it in him. He's made of the right stuff. And there's something to that to an extent.
There's an advantage for sure.
And so I think he's the one out of those three that I feel the most confident in getting the draft capital. He has the right size, and if teams think, you know what, his blocking's bad, maybe it's like bad technique, he got bad coaching, which he played for Brian Kelly, so there's some of that that is probably factual. Maybe you can coach that up a little bit, whereas like Harold Fannin, like he's small, like he's not, I don't think his frame is built to pick up a bunch of weight. Like you can't coach that out of him. Whereas
and Taylor did look good on that drill. I wish I knew the name of it, but when they pushed the sled,
the sled,
the blocking one, it looked good. Like Fannin looked absolutely terrible, right? And so
is he the one that turned it sideways?
Yeah, he's the one that turned it sideways. Yeah, so like I agree with you 100%. If you have an early draft, like I would feel comfortable going Taylor there as your third tight end.
Well, we hit Fannin there. What do you guys got for sleepers?
All righty, so I'll hit mine. First one's Ty Felton. So I went pretty deep, but I think Felton. I went two pretty deep guys, and then the other one's like not too bad. But yeah, Felton. Right now I have him like as right outside the top 20 wide receivers. But the dude put up a really, really good year last year. 57 catches for first downs. Obviously he's out of Maryland. Do say what you will. 4.38 40 and 9.6 RAS, both really good numbers. He's like a Z wide receiver. And what I noticed is like he can win on vertical routes. And then he also excels in the screen game. So I think take a shot on him in the fourth round. We'll see what happens and where he gets drafted.
I know this is just me and my Raiders trauma, but I hear a fast, athletic wide receiver out of Maryland, and I just immediately go to Darius Hayward Bay. Out of my head.
Yeah, no, I don't think he'll be overdrafted because there's a lot of wide receivers that are solid, right? So but we'll see. And then this guy, Marcus Yarns, running back out of Delaware. I don't know. I think if he does get drafted, it's going to be 5th, 6th round. But for me, he's a really, really good pass catcher. He had a 9.0 RAS, 4.45 40. And then last year he had a really, really good year at Delaware. A couple numbers I found is that the last 2 years he was 19th in 2023 and 18th in 2024 in yards per route run. For a running back, it's pretty darn good. And then as a runner, he has really good vision, good burst, and acceleration. So he's a guy that could possibly, if he does go in the 5th or in the 6th or 7th round, he's a guy that possibly could go undrafted, and then you go out and pick him up on waivers. So that was kind of where my thought process was there. I just finished up a startup without rookies, with rookies, and I picked him up as my second to last round. He's not even in the rookie in sleeper yet, so I did a placeholder. So you know what? Take a shot if he doesn't get drafted in the rookie draft and pick him up on waivers. And then another bloodline guy, Oronde Gadsden II, tight end out of Syracuse. For me, he could be a nice late 3rd early fourth guy. He went 4-4, I think it was 4-5 in our mock on Monday. He's my tight end 6, and he's getting some comps to Trey McBride. So for me, he is newer to the tight end position. He played wide receiver his first, I think it's 3 years at him in Syracuse, and then last year he turned into a tight end. So really good pass catcher, and then he does have a little bit of injury history. He was out a whole year for a Lisfranc injury, so I think he could slide a little bit in the draft. But for me, I always like to look for guys in the third and fourth round that could possibly hit. So I will never live this down, but I put my stamp on Puka, and that's my highest rostered wide receiver. So I'll never forget it.
You're chasing that Puka high. That's what you're
exactly.
doing. Yeah. I love it. All right. So you inspired me. So I'm going to go a little bit lower in the rankings than the guys I put down here. Wide receiver, the one I want to talk about is Torrey Horton. He's a wide receiver out of Colorado State. I think he might go a little bit later in the draft. He missed a bunch of this year, 2024 season with an injury. His 2022, 2023 seasons were fantastic. He went over 1,000 yards both years at Colorado State. They didn't exactly have stellar quarterback play. He could have come out last year. I remember there was talk of him being maybe like a day 2 guy last year, and he went back to school. I think that ended up hurting his draft stock a little bit, but he's a good player, man. He's got big, tall guy. He runs pretty fast.
Had a good combine too.
He had a good combine. I am interested to see where he goes. I could see him kind of sneaking in that fourth round. And if that's the case, I'll feel good taking a shot on him kind of in the later third of rookie drafts. As a small Mountain West guy there for you. Running backs, Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech. He ran a little bit faster than I thought he was going to at his size. He's a big boy. He's a big bruiser. He put his production profile at Texas Tech is just insane. He was their offense. He's a bruiser. I don't expect him to get great draft capital, but I think he's worth a shot taking, just because I think he could sneak into maybe the 5th, 6th round, and similar to kind of what you're saying with Marcus Yarns. I think he just in the right spot. He can, if he finds a nice little role, I think he can be fantasy relevant and stick on a 53-man roster. And then at tight end, we kind of touched on the tight end class isn't the greatest, but one guy I like, shocker, I'm going to go with a Notre Dame tight end, but Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame, he was fantastic. His 2023 season, he basically was their only receiving option, and he was amazing. And then he tore his ACL, and he did come back this year. You could tell the first half of the year he really wasn't right. Like in that Texas A&M game, he was out there as basically just like a decoy. He barely ran any routes. He started to get more involved as the offense went on, as the year went on. And he played pretty good football in the college football playoffs against some good competition. He's a little bit of a do-it-all kind of guy. He actually ran faster than I thought he was going to, like in the 4.7s. I think he is one of those guys too, where I think he has the body type that NFL teams are looking for at tight ends. And I think so for that reason, he'll get drafted. And he's one of those I'm watching to see where he lands. And he might be a guy I try to sneak in the, 3rd, 4th round of rookie drafts and just stash in my taxi squad or at the back end of my roster and see what happens. Because the tight end landscape is pretty crappy right now. And so that's one I'm keeping an eye on there, see what we can do.
Yep. Him, Ferguson, and Evans are right next to each other for my rankings, 40, 41, and 42. So really good picks in my opinion in that 4th round.
Ron likes them all.
It's great. It's great, guys. I'm sure they're all real people. Ron Slack, I'm just going to steal a couple of McSpankies because I know who they are. Restrepo and Devin Neal, a little bit more well-known than your guys, but, I like Restrepo. He did, the one pass he catches, he's laying on his back with one hand. That was sweet. And honestly, he has a lot of really good catches throughout his film. And Devin Neal, watching him torch Colorado, he was spectacular, man.
Devin Neal, so he ran slow as shit at the combine, but don't get it twisted. The dude can play. He's a good running back. I wouldn't say don't fall for him testing poorly. Like he plays a lot better than he tested.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think there's
Yeah, he dropped a little bit in our recent mock we did on Monday. Went to 210, but for me, like that's a
I'd still
smash.
take him there. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Same thing.
Okay.
Scatabo, I saw Scatabo dropped a little bit as well at 3-2. When I was doing mocks a little bit earlier, he was firmly in the second round, but he picked up an injury and did not participate in all.
Yes. Is he the one that said his hamstring was tightening up or something?
Yeah.
So, just Coach for I'm going to test like shit, so I'm going to say I'm not testing.
So I'll wait for the hand time is what it means, and hopefully they'll stop it a little bit early.
We know Scatabo is going to run slow. Like this isn't new. Like frankly, if he runs like a mid 4.6, I'm like, yeah, it's probably about
pretty darn good. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, man. I don't love that. With some of the guys, like some of the top end guys we talked about it, like I don't mind if they skip the testing, but like Scatabo, like I feel like he's in a tier where he
should be out there. Man.
He needs to show out anytime he can. I know he played really well on his soul. He left his soul out on the field against Texas, but I think he's got enough time after that. So
that should be enough where it's like, man, he can play against one of the best defenses in the country of the SEC. Like he showed that he can play with some of the best competition. Like I don't think he should be punished necessarily.
He's good in that game. Yeah. Well, you guys got anything else for the people?
No, just stay tuned. I think Monday is when the legal tampering period officially starts. I know they're already tampering illegally, but they can start doing it without getting in trouble on Monday. So I think the news is going to come in hot and heavy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can't wait.
And then join our Discord, join our Patreon. Yes. We put together an awesome, mainly Spanky put together an awesome fantasy rookie draft kit. So lots of players there. Cool. It is sweet. Awesome. So
very sweet.
Come join the Discord and I'll show you guys a couple free previews of it. It's pretty sick. So I think you'll like it. All right. Well, on that note, peace out, everybody. Have a good one.
See.